Welcome to the Tackling Tech podcast, powered by Dyknow. Join us as we tackle all things EdTech with insightful interviews, actionable tips, and strategies that you can implement in your school or district to make technology integration more effective. Whether you're a teacher, a tech coach, or a technology administrator, we're giving you an advantage in your role by sharing stories from people who are passionate about working with their peers and enhancing the learning experience with technology. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Now let's tackle some tech.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Tackling Tech, a podcast that shares stories about how you can build better collaboration in K-12 schools. I am your host, Brett McGrath, Vice President of Marketing at Dyknow, and I am really excited for today's episode. I hope everyone's staying safe and adjusting to the new normal. I've had several conversations with teachers, tech coaches, and admins over the past few weeks, and I've learned so much about how they're operating remotely and how they're really maximizing their role and efforts during this time. When I think about it, the key word really is resilience. These individuals are dedicated to their role and the students they serve, and I'm very excited to be sharing these stories in upcoming episodes of Tackling Tech. I want to thank everyone so far on all the feedback that you have given us on the current episodes and ideas for new episodes. Keep that coming in. That's super helpful for us. I want to also thank everyone who's listening for being an early adopter. You can find Tackling Tech on Apple, Overcast, Google, Spotify, and Pocket Casts. Definitely, if you're listening and you like what you hear, I encourage you to subscribe, rate, and review. Those are all very, very helpful things as we're trying to spread awareness for Tackling Tech and reach a broader audience. You can find Tackling Tech on Twitter at Tackling Tech Pod. That's the best place for you as an audience member to engage with us. Tiara on the marketing team is manning that handle, and she'll definitely get back with you on anything, questions you have about the pod, ideas or topics. Definitely tweet us at Tackling Tech Pod. And then finally, over a few weeks ago, we did a technology coaching conference, all digital, and it went so well, and we received so much great feedback that we wanted to do something similar, and we wanted to do it around remote learning. Because that's the topic that really matters right now. So we're hosting a remote learning summit on Friday, April 17th. It's going to be great. We're going to have a panelist of technology coaches. We launched registration last week. We had a ton of people sign up, and we're also asking people who registered to give us a question that they want answered. We had over 100 questions in the first week of questions that they want our panel to answer during that event. And it really gets me excited because it shows the need and the desire for educators across the country to want to learn more about remote learning and how to do it effectively. So go to dyknow.com. There's a banner at the top of our homepage. Click it and get registered. If you can't make it on April 17th, totally cool. Still sign up and we will send you over the recording. So let's get to why we're here. I know I just plugged the Remote Learning Summit, but our guest today will be on the panel, so I'm excited about that. And I'm joined today by Eric Guise. Eric is currently the media specialist and technology coach at Hopewell Valley Central High School in Pennington, New Jersey. Before taking that role to support teachers with technology, he spent nearly a decade in the classroom as a technology teacher. Eric is also the host of the GotTechEd podcast that sets out to provide quality, tech-centric professional development to busy teachers on the move, that's a great podcast if you're a teacher or a tech coach and want to learn more about professional development. Before we jump into all the questions, Eric, how are you doing? Are you still operating from your basement office?
Thanks, Brett, for having me on the podcast first and foremost. But yeah, I'm operating out of the basement. I'm finding a lot of interesting ways to redecorate my office because I have a feeling we'll be here for a little while. But I'm just trying to find a new norm, trying to develop some type of schedule that's going to work and balance between my family and my school.
Yeah, and it's everybody who I've spoke with on this podcast or outside of the podcast, everyone's trying to find that new normal. Maybe just for the audience, describe kind of your full house and the situation that you're working with and trying to keep your role as normal as possible, but maybe paint the picture of what your surroundings are currently.
Well, right now I'm in the basement, so anytime you're in the basement, it's about 20 degrees cooler than what the upstairs is. And, so the heat down here, just to provide a atmosphere, it's very loud when it's on. So if you're podcasting or working with other people remotely, that has to stay off. So usually I layer up. I have a makeshift desk down here to go along with my regular desk. And basically, I just move around, try to get a change of scenery, put chairs on both sides, and 3 kids upstairs running around. My wife's working full time, so we try to balance our hours out. And then, I have my teaching job from 7:30 in the morning until about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So just a lot of moving parts, but we just have to realize that this isn't going to be a perfect situation, and that you're going to have to adapt, and that background chaotic noise is just going to have to be accepted.
Yes, and I appreciate you painting that picture. I am upstairs in our guest bedroom because my wife's in healthcare and she is doing telehealth today from the home. So it's our strategy is, after, if we get a workout in the morning when we're cooking breakfast, it's what's your schedule like today? Where do I need to be? Where do you need to be? So we're not on top of each other as we're, trying to do our jobs. And that's becoming kind of the new day-to-day for me. And don't have children, but, colleagues and talking with people like you, everyone's trying to, be parents and then also operate in your role. So it's very admirable, but it seems like everybody's being very resilient and making it happen.
Absolutely. I find that teachers are some of the most well-adapted people. We're always constantly asking them to change, whether it's to better their practice or, just some type of a state legislature that got, passed down. We're always asking them to take on new roles, new challenges, and this is really nothing different.
Definitely, and I know we'll dig in on just teachers' adaptability and technology in this conversation, but maybe just to kick it off, Eric, why don't you describe your role at Hopewell Valley Central High School and your primary responsibilities?
Yeah, so I'm the media and tech specialist, and I started this role about 5 years ago. And really, this is a whole bunch of roles, kind of woven into one. I'm a tech coach. I help teachers implement technology as a source of enhancement to their lesson. I help teachers learn some tips and tricks about, classroom management regarding, those Chromebooks being, used as a resource in the classroom. I'm the first line of defense for students when it comes to handing in their Chromebooks when they're broken or not connecting to the internet, because we do have a one-to-one Chromebook initiative at our school. We've been one-to-one for about 6 years now. And lastly, I teach students how to do research. I kind of take on the librarian role as well. And, a lot of people think that books don't have a place anymore, but I am a firm believer that we need to find this harmonious balance between books and digital resources and references, because they're both important.
Definitely. And it's so many tech coach type roles that I speak with have wear a lot of different hats, whether it's, librarian, supporting teachers, maybe it's supporting a Chromebook that isn't working anymore. It varies across the board. I'm curious, just in your role and all the responsibilities that you just described, how do you prioritize, those various responsibilities that you have on a day-to-day basis?
Right. Sometimes it's more challenging than others. Usually after long breaks, that's when the plethora of Chromebook problems arise, because maybe there's an update that was pushed out over winter break or summer break or something like that. So usually I'm pretty good at knowing when the mass majority of problems for the Chromebooks are going to take place. So I kind of block off those times to deal with those issues. But For the most part, it's kind of like a first come, first serve. If anyone sees me, it's and they have a question, I answer it. So that's kind of how I roll there. As far as professional development, I have a scheduler. I use Google Calendar, and anytime that they want to block me out for a period, they just fill out the little form and it goes to my calendar, and I go meet up with them, and we do like a mentor-based learning system where I will listen to them first and foremost, and kind of get a feel for what they want to accomplish in their classroom, and what content they're going over. And then I'll make a couple suggestions. And from there, we'll select a piece of EdTech or a way to push it out through the Chromebook. But I can't stress this enough. My number one thing is we're only going to use technology if it's going to enhance the lesson. And that's kind of my go-to motto. And that same with the podcast, that's our motto there. We're going to give you a whole bunch of tools. We're going to do the research for you, but only use it if there's a reason to use it. And that reason should be to enhance the lesson in some type of way. So really, those are the ways that I support my staff and my students.
Yeah, that enhancing with technology is definitely critical and important. So often, and part of the reason why we started this podcast is we would hear stories about districts or schools trying to implement just all of this various technology without taking all the stakeholders and listening and learning and building better collaboration and identifying, structure and process, and then figuring out if technology can layer in to enhance it. So I think what you described there is something that's very near and dear to our hearts here with Tackling Tech. I'm curious. You mentioned the scheduler and teachers reaching out to you. Have you noticed that has increased, decreased, stayed about the same since we all moved to a remote learning environment?
Well, now I'm a tech coach to the district, so everyone's reaching out. It's just not the people in the high school. So I kind of did away with the Google Calendar as far as them having to request a meeting with me. Now we've been going through email, and I will respond back and forth with them, and I will plug them into the calendar. So really right now I'm just getting a lot of emails, and then I find a mutual agreed upon time. Usually it's hey, you free now? Or shoot me your cell number and I'll reach out to you the next time I'm off of a meeting or off of a phone call. And I'm just finding that there's a steady pace of emails coming in. There's a steady pace of communication. Really, when I get down here into my workspace from 9 to 2, I'm pretty busy. Whether it's answering emails, getting on calls, virtual conferences with a couple of teachers to help them work through a couple problems. It's just a steady flow, and for the most part, everyone's been very patient and very adaptive, and that's really what we have to ask of them right now, because there's a lot of questions. But over we're heading into our 4th week of remote learning. So the first 2 weeks were definitely a lot busier. Now we're starting to back off a little bit, and we're starting to be able, with some of the more experienced tech teachers that use tech, I call them tech comfortable and tech uncomfortable. That's just my phrase for them. But for the tech comfortable teachers, they're now reaching out to see how they could take their remote learning to the next level. And the tech uncomfortable teachers are really starting to master some of the more basic skills that is working just fine with their classes.
We might have to steal that tech comfortable and tech uncomfortable. So if you see that on a future Dyknow blog post, I promise we'll reference you. That's really good. That's really good. So I heard something in there with you describing operating remotely that stood out to me, and I'm curious. It sounds like a big change. You're supporting from a school level to a district level now, working remotely. Is there any other big changes that have happened in your role since you've moved to a remote setting?
That's a great question. I have to also just throw this out there, but our district has done a real nice job at kind of planning for a situation somewhat like this. I think we initially planned for a blizzard to happen or a long closing because of snow days or a tropical storm or something like that that comes up, because we had Katrina a couple years ago. Basically, we had staff plan for 2 virtual days a couple years ago because we were getting 5 or 6 snow days, and they were pushing our graduation date back until almost July. So our staff had a little bit of a opportunity to play around with this remote learning just through that. And I would say to districts out there that are going to try to be more prepared for situations like this in the future, to maybe start there. If you have snow day opportunities, I know not everyone gets snow, but maybe it's a tropical storm that you get, or whatever the case may be. I would have your student or your staff develop 2 or 3 virtual days just to be ready for it. And for some, that's working offline. They get a slip of paper or an email that they always have in their email, or a slip of paper that gives them some stuff that they could do while out without the internet, if they don't have internet capability. And they just keep a hold of it until that time comes. And if it doesn't come, you always have those 2 lessons in the bank. So I would definitely start that way. As far as my role, the workflow of it is really, I just answer questions until about 1:30. And then after that, we do some virtual professional developments. And really, we're just keeping these professional developments pretty simple.
Got it. Yeah. And I think something that I've heard so often in these last few weeks is that, remote learning is not going to go away. And right now, the mentality is how do we make this a part of our curriculum moving forward, and how do we be more proactive with it as we move forward. And it sounds like, your school district had some reasons to think about how remote learning can be a part of the plan. And now that there's a situation where remote learning is the way everyone is operating, your district might be a little more ahead of it. And I think we're going to start to see a trend in K-12 where it's not just how you do remote learning, but it's how do you do remote learning effectively. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's very fair. But oftentimes with COVID-19, we think of negative situations, but a positive out of this is that our teacher tech skills are going to improve immensely. So that is one positive takeaway. The other thing is I think it's going to really shed light on the inequality of tech privileges out there. We have some school districts that, not because of the teachers, not because of anything other than, maybe monetarily, they have not been able to get the funds needed to have this one-to-one in place or to get more technology brought in. I think we're going to really start focusing on that. And I hope some of the educational government people really take a look at this and see how we can level the playing field a little bit, because there are students out there thirsty to learn right now, and they just don't have the opportunity. And sometimes they don't have the parents or the guardians or the support system at home to learn. So that should be our number one. Before we worry about how we can enhance practice, we need to get these schools the resources that they need to be able to participate and not, further separate the digital divide. I think that should be our number one.
Yeah, I know. And I like that mindset. And it is, no matter how uncomfortable the situation is as a whole, there are opportunities within this that you just described that I think K-12 educators should focus on. And I agree. I think on the other side of this, you're going to see a stronger relationship between teachers and tech coaches and the technology that they're being used, and there'll be less hurdles. So I'm very optimistic on that. But let's talk about teachers specifically. Something in our initial conversation that stood out to me, something you said was that teachers don't need to learn new technology, but maybe get creative with what they know during this time. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, the first couple of weeks when schools were starting to, shut down their schools, when all this was going on, there were a lot of amazing educators, and I don't know what the proper term is, edu celebrities, edu stars, I've heard them all, but There are a lot of educators out there doing awesome things, and they were sharing a lot of resources. Me being included on sharing resources, I wanted to get stuff out there that people could use. But really what happened was everyone was sharing, and it was just overwhelming those tech uncomfortable. The tech uncomfortable is, scouring Pinterest, scouring Twitter and all this. And I heard this from my teachers, that they're getting so many cool things, they don't have the time to look at it, see if it would fit into their classroom, learn how to push it out and all that. So we had to kind of bring everybody back in, be like, hey, let's just use what we know. We are a G Suite school. Let's use slides, docs, sites, all sheets. I always forget sheets. I'm terrible at sheets. Need to do better there. But let's use these apps and make our instruction better just using these apps. So what I mean by that is, so for Google Slides, there are a lot of things that you can do other than a presentation. You can make an ebook. You could do a virtual gallery walk. You could do choice boards. You could do a digital review game. You could do a choose your own adventure. These are 5 things in Slides. Teachers know how to use Slides. There are templates out there, and I'll send you a couple of the templates that we use. But there are templates out there that all they have to do is open up a presentation, which teachers know how to do, and change it with their content. Everything else, all the formatting, all that stuff stays the same. So, and because their students haven't seen it every day, they've seen presentations every day. They've seen YouTube videos that are embedded into presentations every day. So let's give them something they haven't seen every day, but something that everyone knows how to use, and that's Google Slides.
I like that. And I think, there's so many companies that fit into this and can help support, teachers as we're in a remote setting with the technology that they have. But I think that's a good call out, and something for everybody to think about is that everybody's trying to share what they're doing, and it can be a little overwhelming. So just taking a step back and thinking about, this is what we have in place. This is what you currently know how to use. Now is the time to really leverage that, and it can go a long way. I like that. Can you talk a little bit about the digital badge system that you have in place and how that's been leveraged during, the period of remote learning we're in?
Yeah, and so our digital badge system was made by our tech coaches in our district with the leadership of our assistant superintendent. So basically, the badge system was put into place to support our one-to-one initiative. And really, we went through a couple different professional developments before that. We did a lot of blended learning work. But what we found out was our teachers wanted to do some professional developments on their own time. So because we are so busy, teachers, they just get so much more and more piled on them every year. It would be nice to be able to do professional development that counted towards their hours, that could be done by themselves at their own pace and at their own time. So the digital badge system is really just a whole bunch of EdTech tools and teaching strategies. And this year we included like personal well-being, like meditation ones and things like that the teachers can earn. And really what it is a teacher would go and they would look at the list of badges. I think we have almost 40 or 50 badges that we made up, and it's a slide deck that introduces them to the tool. It walks them through how to sign up for that tool. And all these EdTech tools have been approved by our district, saying that the tools meet the privacy standards, FERPA, COPA, and all that good stuff. So the teachers go through the slide deck, and at the end, it asks them to do 2 things. The first thing, it asks them to brainstorm ways that they would use it in the classroom. And then it asks them to have an artifact of one way that they incorporated it into their classroom or will incorporate it into their classroom. They submit a badge application, and then we give them a digital badge that they could post. Some of them posted on their doors. Some of them posted in their emails because it is a digital copy. But really this badge system, to get 4 badges, it might take 4 hours, an hour per badge. It could be a little less, a little more. But when they're done with that, if they complete 4 by May, they get the May half day. We have a half day teaching day, half day professional development, but they would get that half day right before Memorial Day off if they had their 4 badges done. So we've seen a great response to this, and really I just think it's a very successful program that helps teachers get into the right direction.
Yeah, no, and I like the proactive nature of the digital badge system, and it provides some structure and always gets items like professional development top of mind with teachers. Some other things that we had talked about, but maybe if you discuss how you use SAMR and just the overall technology integration matrix to kind of build your structure, and maybe talk about how that helps keep you and your role as proactive as possible.
Yeah, so I did mention that, the badge system, it asks teachers to do 2 things. And the first thing was ask them how they would use it in the classroom. Well, when they do that, they're reflecting on the technology integration matrix. So we first were using SAMR and as our go-to framework. But after some research on SAMR, you realize that SAMR was basically an infographic of a strategy that explains the use of technology, but it didn't explain the learning situations. So we wanted to get a well-rounded picture of how we use technology into the classroom, or in the classroom. So the technology integration matrix is a framework that targets the use of technology to enhance learning situations. We still have something very similar to SAMR, but we are also looking at the learning environment. So it makes a matrix. It's a 25-box matrix, and across the top is 5 categories. So basically it's SAMR, but the the R is broken into 2 categories. So the first thing is entry level, and then there's the adoption, the adaption, the infusion, and the transformation. So basically, as you introduce tech tools, if the teacher is doing the introduction, more than likely it's going to fall in the entry or adoption category. But as the students get more involved in selecting the technology, it's going to move further to the right on the matrix. So it will probably fall into the adaption, the infusion, the transformation. When it's completely student-ran, student-centered, it's infusion, transformation. So the adaption is kind of the teacher, student working together type thing. Everything to the left is just the teachers throwing out technology. Everything to the right is student-centered. Now, going down on the left side, these are your learning situations. You have active, collaborative, constructive, authentic, and goal-oriented. And when you put these together, you're making these 25 matrix boxes in the middle. And these are really cool. And I'll share this link with the technology integration matrix. It's interactive. When you click on one of the boxes, it's going to bring up a new screen, and it's going to tell you what the student role is. It's going to tell you what the teacher role in that learning atmosphere with technology is. It's going to describe the setting, and it's going to give you some video examples. And that's the huge piece. You can look at lessons in action, and that will help you understand, what it means to be an infused classroom with the collaboration going on in that classroom. So that's basically the, 2-minute and 12-second overview of the technology integration matrix. It's a phenomenal site. They give you free resources if you want to implement it into your school. And it's just amazing. I love it.
Yeah, no, and I think as I tried to get educated and get up to speed after you mentioning it, it really, me going through it and then hearing you talk, it really gives me an idea of structure that has allowed for you to maybe operate more efficiently in a remote learning setting than maybe not. And what I'm curious about next is just goals and measures, that's something you always want to talk about and always want to think about. And I'm curious if you have any goals or measures in place for remote learning, or is this something that potentially your district might be thinking about in light of COVID-19?
Yeah, this is a tough question. I mean, right now, every district is trying to figure out what to do with grading for the rest of the year. Because one, we still don't know. Right now, I think we're out until maybe the end of April, officially. Unofficially, it's probably going to be longer. So our third marking period ends the middle of April. So what do we do with the third marking period grades where we only saw students for a couple of weeks before we were, remote learning? Because we have a lot of students that, still struggle with the technology piece, whether it's Wi-Fi, even though our district is doing a great job at getting those kids Wi-Fi by handing out devices that will provide them with that opportunity. But then we also have something unique here, and that's we have families that are sick or parents that are working full time, and some of them go into work still. They're doctors, they're nurses, whether they're working grocery store, it doesn't matter. They're away from the house. So, I mean, it's very hard to assign a grade to a student in that way without having the proper measures put into place and the expectations. My expectation is that everyone tries. And this is a great opportunity for teachers to try new things because the bar is set extremely low. We want to push out quality stuff to our students, but at the same time, this is a new territory for everybody. So why not take a chance? And if it fails, so be it. This is a time to allow it to fail and then try to build yourself back up and learn that new skill. So expectations are tough. And I think it's just going to be on a district by district basis. For my students, for the teachers I work with, I just want them to try. I want them to be creative. I'm hoping that teachers, kind of to ditch the question answer type assessments, whether it's formative or summative assessments, ditch those and allow students to be creative right now, because this is a great opportunity for students to do passion projects, to find something that interests them, and to try new technologies to help share everything out with their classrooms, with their classmates.
Yeah, no, and I think, again, you're describing how this situation might open the door and provide more opportunities for everyone to learn. And I love that, embracing creativity during this time. And that definitely makes a lot of sense. Just in closing, Eric, there are hundreds, maybe thousands of people that in your role across the country that are currently supporting teachers with technology in a remote setting. What kind of advice do you have for anyone in the audience who might be in a similar role based on what you've learned maybe in the last few weeks?
Right now is a great time to get to know the people that you do not know. Ask them to do whether you're using Zoom, whether you're using Google Meet, Skype, whatever it may be, maybe it's a phone call, get to know them, get to understand their needs, start making stuff that fits the needs of some of the tech uncomfortable, and allow the tech comfortable to adapt those resources to fit their advanced needs. And just realize that we're all in this together, and realize that a lot of good can come from this situation. And that's really my message during this time, is a lot of good stuff is going to happen from students. I've seen creative works done by a lot of students, teachers. I see them going above and beyond while supporting their family, while watching kids. So just note that everyone's in it together. Reach out to other tech coaches. Find these PLN niches that will allow you to just pick up a new skill, or just unleash frustrations, things that are bothering you, and see what solutions can come of it.
That's great. Eric, in closing, you want to tell people a little more about GotTech, where they can find you, listen, give you an opportunity to plug your own podcast.
I appreciate that. Our podcast is GotTech, the podcast. Our website is www.gottech.com. We are on every major podcasting platform. So just look for GotTech, the podcast. If you want to follow, Nick is my co-host. If you want to follow either of us, Twitter is a great way to find us. Our podcast Twitter is at WeGotTech. My Twitter handle is at GuiseGotTech, and Nick's is at NickGotTech.
Awesome. Yeah, check that out. Definitely a lot to learn from those two guys. Eric, this was so much fun. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to share your stories on tackling tech. We look forward to reconnecting here in a couple weeks at the Remote Learning Summit. That's going to be awesome. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and stay safe and be well, and we'll talk to you all very soon. Thanks so much.